So yeah, this is a topic. This is a topic I don't know too much about. I mean, my main introduction to Psylocke and other sorts of Marvel characters who weren't a part of the cinematic universe. It was all the rage in the 2010s. It's mostly porn of the character, from on sites like Twitter and Bluesky and Gilboru and whatnot. But as a writer and an illustrator, I'm always happy to learn about these sorts of mistakes that big publishers make and whatnot, and how I might be able to avoid them. Because one day I'm totally gonna be one of these guys. I'm gonna be one of these big name publishers, totally.
Psylocke. Or Psylocks, plural, maybe? Because there are technically two of them, but then again, only one is the original, so maybe 1.5 Psylocks is better, but they are both real, so I don't know if counting one of them as less than one is fair. Look, as I'm sure you...
All right, let's see, we're starting out with the classic, superhero fucking confusion in terms of the countless iterations of the characters and which run, what was your favorite run of Superman? Was it run a bajillion in 91 or a bajillion in 90? And you're like, bro, I don't think any human being on the planet could keep up with I mean, at this point, like a 70-year run. I don't think Psylocke runs that long.
The history of this character is an extremely convoluted one, and it was never supposed to be. It's only like this because of a real-world misunderstanding at Marvel, but luckily I'm here to explain it at least as best I can. No need for a long intro today. Explaining this body-swapping nonsense is going to be long enough as it is. So without further ado, let's talk about the history of Psylocke. Or Psylocks. Whatever. Psylocke's real name is Betsy Braddock, though she wouldn't take up that code name until a decade after her original debut. In fact, her storyline doesn't even start with the X-Men, but it does begin with another iconic Marvel character, a heroic national champion clad in red, white, and blue, someone who believes the ideals of right will always triumph over might. I am of course referring to Captain Britain. For those of you who already know the last name Braddock in Marvel, you saw right through that bit, but hopefully I got at least some of you. And if you don't know,
I knew something was coming, but my Marvel knowledge is, unfortunately, too impoverished to have to guess which
Brian Braddock, the original Captain Britain, is Betsy's
non-Captain America superhero that would have been
twin brother. While Betsy and the twins' older brother Jamie are both mutants, Brian was not. He got his superpowers from a magical amulet given to him by Merlin. Brief sidebar, if you expect that Captain Britain lore is just going to be Captain America, but for Britain, it is not that even remotely. But regardless...
Okay. This is a very interesting out of context image. So it's apparently when Captain Britain fails her world, everyone turns into dinosaurs. Which, I mean,
Betsy got her first taste of superhero action through Captain Britain stuff. Originally, she would just get wrapped up in villain plots and things in the ways that you'd expect from a non-powered sibling of a superhero, but Betsy gradually began displaying telepathic abilities. It turns out that her mutant genetics had subconsciously activated during her teenage years, but she wasn't aware enough of her powers to actually do much with them. Gradually, though, they were strengthening with time, and eventually they got to a point where...
Right, Britannica Rex, it's basically just saying King Britain, right? I mean, honestly, it's kind of an inspired choice. This is kind of, this is already kind of interesting seeing a bit. I mean, basically, what was a kind of a one-off side character, basically slowly transitioning into, seemingly a character big enough to have their own, I guess, character in something like Marvel superheroes, whatever the name of that game is. That's been all the rage recently. I don't actually. I'm terrible with names.
This meant that Betsy was recruited for the Psi division of an organization known as the Special Tactical Reserve for International Key Emergencies, otherwise known as Strike, otherwise known again as basically SHIELD but British. This period in Betsy's history wasn't super long, but I thought her time at the Psi division was worth mentioning because that is where she received training in her telepathic abilities, meaning she was ready for the big leagues. Yes, that means it's finally time for Betsy Braddock to get out into the field, get a superhero identity and a code name, and suit up as Captain Britain. Again, yeah, I did the same bit twice, sue me. This is where you get a little taste of how absolutely insane Captain Britain lore is. Betsy became Captain Britain shortly after Bryant Captain Britain fought an evil version of himself from another universe, also named Captain Britain, but spelled differently. Betsy was actually the one to
Bro, this is crazy.
finish off this evil Captain Briton as he tried to attack her, and then she used her telepathic abilities to essentially melt his brain, at which point she took his costume, which, by the way, Captain Britain powers work, gave her the abilities instead. She was then mentored and trained in superhero stuff by yet another alternate Captain Britain named Captain UK. So to recap, Captain Britain fought Captain Britain, then Captain Britain's sister killed Captain Britain, took the Captain Britain costume, and became the new Captain Britain to be mentored by Captain UK. I told you.
I don't know why he's talking about like it's so hard to understand.
This is a very to be mentored by Captain UK.
This is a very easy to understand flowchart. You know, very nothing convoluted here at all.
Hey, I told you, Captain Britain lore is insane. Unfortunately for Betsy, her career as Captain Britain was also pretty short, as she was beaten and blinded by a villain named Slaymaster. Betsy could actually still see decently well because of her telepathic abilities, but she did retire from active superheroing. Her life was looking up after this, though, as she got engaged to a secret agent that she met during her time at Strike, and the happy couple moved to the Swiss Alps to live out the rest of their lives in peace. And then shortly after that, Betsy was kidnapped by Mojo. Hey look, several minutes into this video and we're finally at an X-Men character. Mojo is an entire rabbit hole on his own, but for those viewers who are new to the Marvel Universe, he is an entity from a pocket dimension where all of society is ruled by reality TV. Mojo is the top show producer in this world, and he has a habit of kidnapping superpowered people to star in these shows. This is why he grabbed Betsy. He then proceeded to brainwash her, fix up her eyesight with prosthetics that were actually cameras, and give her the code name Psylocke. Yeah, it originally came from a villain, so I'm kind of surprised that that's what she stuck with, but hey, whatever. Betsy was...
Yeah, I guess that was her slave name, but now she's taking it on. She's taking it back.
Only under Mojo's control for like half an issue though, before she was rescued by the New Mutants and then helped them to free the X-Men, who Mojo had also captured and turned into babies. That's a whole separate thing. Like I said, Mojo is a rabbit hole that I could do a whole separate video.
So yeah, the reason that Betsy was likely brought in X-Men was because Chris Claremont, the writer, also wrote some Captain Britain comics as well. Okay. And so behind the scenes dynamics, I guess. Interesting. Interesting how those things play out like that.
Video on, but for now, just remember that hypnotizing people and turning them into...
What the fuck am I looking at? My bumptious bouncing ex-babies come to pop up. I love you, however do I do it. I'm not reading that in song. Yeah. Runaway is a reasonable reaction to this.
Is a rabbit hole that I could do a whole separate video on, but for now, just remember that hypnotizing people and turning them into different things is already happening in this storyline, because that will come up later in this video. Betsy's help in defeating Mojo led her to become an ally of the X-Men, but not a technical member of the team quite yet. That wouldn't happen until the crisis known as the Mutant Massacre. Betsy was not on the battlefield during this event, but she was telepathically coordinating some things from X-Mansion. This meant that when Sabretooth attacked the mansion unexpectedly, Betsy was the one who had to deal with him. Her bravery during this conflict led the team to offer her full membership, which she accepted, keeping the codename Psylocke and finally joining the X-Men 10 years after her original debut in the pages of Captain Britain. Now we're going to skip...
I mean, honestly, that's just... That feels kind of true to life almost, in terms of just the circuitous, convoluted routes from point A to point B. Very high, I'm sure unintended, but high degree of verisimilitude there.
Forward 3 years, because it is finally time for the body swap storyline, or at least almost time. Real quick, we're going to pause and I'm going to explain how exactly I'm going to present this story to you, because it is a strange one. I am first going to present this to you in line with current canon. Like if you were in the Marvel Universe and asked Betsy what her history was, this is what you would get. Parts of this are going to be stupid and unsatisfying, which I am well aware of. That's kind of just how it's written. But then once I'm done with that, we're gonna backtrack and I'll give you the actual history of these comics. I'll save details for that segment, but to contextualize now, the only reason the storyline is like this is because people at Marvel, the real world company, messed up, and this is what we were left with. So
we're getting the diegetic and then non-diegetic answers to these questions. All right, makes sense.
Here we go. 3 years pass, it is now 1989, and Psylocke is a valued member of the X-Men. One day, she has a vision that several of the team are going to be killed in action, so she offers, or rather psychically insists, that they escape their situation by using an artifact called the Siege Perilous. The Siege Perilous is kind of like a teleporter combined with a reality warping spell. It does take people to new places, but it also has a habit of overwriting their memories, transforming them into new bodies, and generally just giving them new lives wherever they end up. Terrified of her vision coming true,
I feel like it's not worth it then. If you're gonna, there's gotta be safer, like, alternatives, right? Like, I mean, it's fucking the Marvel universe. I'm sure there's like this Space Stone from the Infinity Gauntlet that you can use to like teleport somewhere safely, right? Though, I guess they didn't have access to that.
Her powers to force the rest of the team through the crystal, thinking that it will all turn out fine. She is absolutely wrong about this. The team gets their memories erased and are scattered to the winds. The X-Men are no more. She has basically dismantled them in one fell swoop. Betsy enters the Siege Perilous as well, and ends up with no memories in the South.
Yeah, technically her memories are altered, not fully erased, but close enough.
Sea, where she is captured by a crime lord for the Hand, yes, like the same hand that fights Daredevil, named Matsuo Tsurayaba. Even without her memories, Tsurayaba is able to identify her as Psylocke, whom the public had presumed dead. He knows that she has telepathic abilities and thinks that might be of use to him in a weird situation he's facing. See, the crime lord was in love with an assassin who was in a coma at the time, and he figured that if he could somehow expose her to Betsy's telepathy, that might be able to snap her out of it. So he uses technology provided to him by Mojo of all people to swap their bodies. Very important note here. In the comic where this happens, we don't actually see the assassin involved in this body swap yet. That is a reveal that happens later. What we see at the time is just Betsy in this new body, once again brainwashed into working for a villain under the codename Lady Mandarin. Even in this new form, Betsy has kept her telepathic abilities, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. After all, she's a mutant, her powers should be genetic, and therefore she should not keep them through a body swap. But don't worry.
Yeah, that's classic. I was gonna say comic book writing, but honestly, it's so endemic to like writing generally. People do not care about that kind of difference. They don't even like. I doubt the writers there was even a thought in their head.
Because not only does she still have her powers, they've actually been enhanced a bit. By switching bodies with an assassin, muscle memory has given Psylocke an instant crash course in martial arts. This is also where we get to see her powers used more offensively, leading to the purple psychic knife thing that's become an iconic part of her kit. Psylocke remains under evil influence for a bit, but is later freed by the newly reformed X-Men. However, at this point, the other woman in the body swap...
Bro, how did that story work? Like, you said the X-Men have been scattered to the four corners of the wind and had like new identities implanted into their brains. Like that must have been that sounds like a story all on its own. Which I mean, I guess it probably was depicted in the comics.
Is still nowhere to be found, and the X-Men don't even really make much of an effort to get Betsy back to normal at all. The entire team, Psylocke included, just kind of goes home, and Betsy looks like this now. And
that's. I forgot to read the last bit that I'm covering up. But yeah, anyway, Psylocke and Wolverine go to Madripoor for a while, but never attempt to fix the swap. Like what? I mean, yeah, I'll let that slide. But like, I mean, I feel like, I think we all know that in real life, like 90% of people would be like, I kind of want my original body back. I mean, now I don't know how long. How much time has passed since like the start of this whole saga and up to now? Cause maybe Psylocke was getting on years, and he's like, "Bro, I get a young body, a fit body. What more could I ask for?" Maybe that's what happened. Yeah, as you said, parts diegetically are very very unsatisfying. Yeah, I feel like that was like the writers just being like, "Yeah, we kind of want things to go this way, so we're gonna make them go that way." Never mind the like plausible real world consequences of having your body swapped like that.
It'll look like this with no resolution in sight for about 3 years. Remember how I warned you that parts of this would be unsatisfying? Yeah, this is one of those. Time passes.
Okay, see, it seems like you've I mean, yeah, you presumably you watched this video before sending it to me. But,
yeah. And Psylocke remains an active member of the X-Men even after this ninjification? Is that anything? It made me laugh, so I'm gonna leave it in, whatever. Anyway, after a couple years, a mysterious woman shows up at X Mansion, hopefully bringing some answers. She attacks Psylocke directly, she rips off her mask, oh my god, she looks exactly like Betsy used to, and then she starts this dramatic monologue where she says that she is Betsy Braddock, and she's here to deal with the woman who's an imposter and has been claiming to be her for the past 3 years. Okay, hold on, something is not adding up here. If this is a
I didn't remember it came right after that. You printed too much of the story or the video on. I guess that means it left a good, strong impression. But this is interesting. Like it kind of calling. I mean, there's a lot of ways this could have taken place. I guess. I mean, could be that the person who got the assassin who got swapped into Betsy's body had like a freaking existential crisis and started believing himself to be Betsy Braddock, or even weirder things with the consciousness inside of the I guess current Psylocke is like some weird mishmash that like believes itself to be the original, and I don't know.
For the past 3 years,
unfortunately, it's probably not going to be half as interesting as either of those scenarios, but let's see.
Okay, hold on. Something is not adding up here. If this is a body swap situation, why are both women claiming to be the real Betsy? Is one of them lying or a double agent of some kind? That would be wild, because as I've said a couple times at this point, it has been years since this began. What the hell is happening? Well, at this point, nobody knows. Not the readers, not the X-Men, not even either of the two Psylocks themselves. They both genuinely believe themselves to be the real one.
Do the writers even know? I'm a little afraid to hear the answer to that. But
it's here that we finally get more information about the assassin whose body Psylocke has been running around in. Her name is Kwannon, we get the whole backstory with her and Surayaba, and we find out about her master, who might be able to give a little bit of information as to this whole debacle. The X-Men are, after all, familiar with Betsy, but Kwannon is new to them, so they hope the guy who trained her might be able to provide some insights as to which one of these women is which. The X-Men take a field trip to Japan to talk to the guy, and it turns out that, he actually has no idea either. Apparently, this situation is way...
All right. Mr. Fencer over here, like his answers, his whole situation is, yeah, you're both who you claim to be. Which, I mean, to be fair, I was saying something kind of like that. Let's see how they make this work.
Anybody was thinking. It turns out that this body swap was not just a body swap. The two women were entangled, in a sense, at a fundamental level. They did switch bodies, but their memories and personalities were also all mixed up with each other. This is also the explanation as to how Betsy kept her telepathic abilities in the new body, which isn't a very good explanation, very much comic book hand-wavy nonsense, but that's what we have. Likely due to those telepathic abilities, Betsy's persona had won out in both cases. This wasn't revealed at the time, but for the sake of giving you guys a good summary, I'm gonna tell you what was actually the case. The real Betsy was the one in Kwannon's body, the one who had been on the X-Men for 3 years. The one who looked like Betsy was actually Kwannon, but Betsy's personality and memories had just overridden her own, so she thought that she was Betsy even though she wasn't.
Damn. Poor Kwannon got fucking overwritten entirely.
Does this make a lot of sense? Sure, why not? Ultimately,
I mean, yeah, with the rules that we've been given, yes, it makes sense. The rules don't make sense, but within the rule set, it makes sense.
Matter because, like I said, at the time, they didn't know this. The status quo was just that there were two Betsys, and no one was sure which was the original. No one has any idea what the hell is going on, and even if they had a solution to fix it, they would only have a 50-50 shot at getting it right, and the X-Men don't want to do that to their teammate, so both Betsys are just kind of around now. To avoid confusion, or at
I mean, honestly, storylines like this the how to phrase it, like they're kind of what make these like American comic books what they are. Like you would never see shit like even in the most like long running convoluted fanfic, I've never seen shit like that, and that's interesting in and of itself. Like this is unique shit that you're not gonna really find anywhere else.
At least as much confusion as possible, which is not much in this situation. Quanon, who again is in Betsy's body and also thinks that she is Betsy, doesn't use the codename Psylocke and instead takes the name Revanche. Revanche being a French word that means revenge, but specifically in the context of reclaiming lost territory. And I gotta admit, that is a cool code name for someone who's trying to beat an imposter in a body swap situation. I will give them that. Then, in a kind of odd move, Revanche also joins the X-Men. She does not replace Betsy, to be clear. Psylocke is still on the roster. There's just two of them now, both of whom believe in their hearts that they are the real one. And if you think that this would be a bad idea, you would actually be completely right. It was a horrible idea. The two did not get along at all, and who could blame them? But fortunately, well, for one of them at least, the problem was about to solve itself as Revanche would die to the mutant-killing legacy virus. Lord. In the moment of her death, the telepathic powers of the...
Okay, slight correction. Specifically, the powers get channeled through Surayaba so he can do a psychic healing kiss. I don't even know at this point, man. Yeah, me neither, bro. Me neither. It's a little disappointing if she dies here, and then that's how they resolve, big air quotes, the conflict. Like that's not very emotionally satisfying. But then I guess as Red or as Thief, oh my god, I called him Red. But yeah, as Thief and Sir Superhero said, there's going to be some very unsatisfying moments here.
Synchronized and finally sorted out their memories. The Betsy who was dying was actually Quanon, and the Betsy who had been Psylocke for the past 3 years was truly the original. However, while this fixed the confusion around the situation, it didn't fix the situation itself. Betsy was still in Quanon's body, and now the Quanon consciousness was dead, and the original Betsy body had been infected with the legacy virus, which presumably meant it wasn't very stable anymore. So Betsy was stuck, and there was no apparent solution in sight. So she remained in Quanon's body for 25 years. Psylocke just kind of accepts that she's fundamentally different now. She starts dating Warren Worthington, aka Angel, who had a similar experience being transformed into Archangel, and on that...
Well, to be fair, there's some nice parallels there. I mean, I guess the writers did their best. I mean, they made the best of this weird ass situation.
Shockingly abrupt note: we are done. That is the end of the body swap arc, at least until the present day. All right, so now that we're at this horrible point, let's backtrack and do that how did we get here section that I promised. To begin with this, I'm going to take you back to one of the first panels I showed in this arc of Betsy.
I mean, honestly, I'm kind of more interested in seeing the non-diegetic explanation of how all this nonsense went down.
Processing her new body for the first time, but I'm going to contextualize it with a couple panels that came right before. The scene begins with Betsy in what looks to be a sort of wardrobe department area. Also, yeah, Storm is here, don't worry about that. But they're looking through at different costume options. Then Betsy gets grabbed and pulled over to some weird machine, presumably the body swapping device, but here she just gets orange goop of some kind poured on her face, and then when the orange goop goes away, she's an Asian woman now. Believe me, that sounded incredibly weird to hear and to say, but I mean, you saw the page, I didn't edit these panels, that is just an accurate description of what this looks like. Now, I'm no expert on body swapping technology, but that doesn't look like what this is at all. I don't exactly know what this looks like, but it's not a body swap. And there is a reason for that, a reason that we can find by turning to the writer of this book, a guy named...
So bro's got the fucking Uncle Sam pointing at you pose going on here.
Chris Claremont. Now, for those of you who are big X-Men fans, that is not a new name to you, but for those of you who are new to the space, Chris Claremont is one of the most important X-Men writers of all time. He wrote the series for 16 consecutive years. He has had a massive impact on mutant characters and really Marvel as a whole, and many...
Yeah, it's a non-diegetic story that makes the video interesting.
Many of your favorite mutants would not be who they are today without Claremont's influence. Here's the thing though, Chris Claremont is great and we should all be appreciative of his work, but also, he is a huge freak. It is unfortunately common knowledge within the dedicated fan base that Chris Claremont has a lot of I'm going to use the more kid-friendly term, interests. And he puts these interests into his writing with shocking levels of boldness. His favorite thing to do is
as an artist and writer myself, all I can say is more power to you. That's how you unlock your full potential as a creative person.
modify and transform people in some way. Characters in Claremont books will get hypnotized, have their personalities altered, have their bodies twisted into weird forms, he will gender bend them, and in some cases, he will even change their race. You might be able to see where I'm going with this now. Yeah, the reason that this body swap to save a comatose ninja doesn't look like that at all is simply that it wasn't that at all. I mean, come on, it explicitly says that the reason for this makeover sequence was that they, quote, can't have a Westerner running the Hong Kong underworld. This was not a body swap. It was just Claremont doing what Claremont do. The one good thing about these little Claremont transformations was that they were never permanent. He would modify somebody for an issue or maybe an arc, but then once he had his fun, they would go back to normal. So why did Psylocke...
Yeah, I was to say that. What was unique about this situation that resulted in 25 years going strong of Psylocke being this way up into Marvel Rivals? Like, is that a part of her character in that story? Like I said, I know basically nothing about Marvel outside of the cinematic universe. I've never played Marvel Rivals, so like, is that touched on in the, like, does she have some voice lines that talk about freaking, like, her consciousness being swapped? Like,
get stuck like this for so long? Well, that's because during the Betsy Turns Asian arc, Chris Claremont was fired.
damn.
The exact reason for Claremont's firing is kind of debated. Actually, the official stance from Marvel is that he left of his own accord, but internal accounts tell a different story. I'm not gonna dig into that. Regardless, Claremont was out and control of the...
Were people, like, fed up with his freaking freakiness? Or like, all right, that's one transformation too far. You Claremont are going to be transformed into an unemployed person.
X-Men passed to another writer named Fabian Nicieza. Fortunately, Nicieza is an incredibly talented and iconic writer as well, so the switch should have been pretty seamless. Unfortunately, we know that the two writers didn't get to communicate about the transition as much as they probably should have, and by his own admission, Nicieza only kind of skimmed some of the X-Men books leading up to his takeover. This means that he kind of just got the X-Men in the state that he got them and had to go forward from there. One of the weird status quo features of this was inexplicably Asian Betsy Braddock. It took a bit, but eventually Nicieza decided to resolve this weird hanging plot thread, but rather than the correct guess of this being an arbitrary decision by Claremont, he made the actually pretty reasonable assumption that it was an unfinished body swap story, and that's what he wrote it as, adding in the whole quantum thing years later. This means that in a hilariously ironic twist, the reason this body swap story is so convoluted is that it kind of went through a thematic body swap of its own halfway through, and all the nonsense that followed was them trying to reconcile the confusion that this mistake had caused. To use a technical term, we in the industry would call this a big, stupid mess, and the sheer level of complexity was probably one of the reasons that Marvel mostly just dropped it for the next couple of decades, but it wasn't the only reason. The other issue was that Psylocke was actually a very cool character and extremely popular to boot. This might not sound like a...
I mean, yes, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I've seen many an art of this character, and I mean, it's a very appealing character design, so I mean... Like, I can see why the Marvel writers were like, we can't get rid of this. Like, we're gonna go back to the old Betsy. Like, no way, we can't. No, don't even play with
first, but oh boy, it was. Remember, at the time that this body swap arc actually started being written as a body swap arc, it had been several years since the transformation itself had happened, and this was the 90s, when the X-Men were massive and growing rapidly. So Psylocke had gained a following, not just as a cool character, but as a cool character who was also the main Asian representation on the team. To put it simply, this means that if Marvel wanted to return Betsy to her normal form quickly and quietly, they had waited too long and absolutely missed their window. This left them with two options. Option one was to just publish a storyline that fixed it and returned her to normal, but this would require them to publish a comic in which they took their most popular Asian character and turned her back into a white woman.
Yeah, no,
and
don't do that.
That wasn't something that they wanted to do for a very valid reason. This left them with option 2. Leave it and just never, ever, ever, ever bring it up. This would ensure that the character of Psylocke would always remain a little bit weird and uncomfortable to people who knew the history, but it would prevent a massive explosion. So that is what they went with, and with few exceptions, Psylocke just stayed in this form and they pretended the body swap never happened for 25 years. So how did this eventually get fixed then? Because thankfully this is not the status quo of Psylocke anymore.
It got fixed?
Betsy has returned to her original form in a switchback that happened in 2018.
Okay.
2018 was not the best year for mutant kind. They were still recovering from Marvel's failed Inhumans push of a couple years prior, and in the next few years they would go into a pocket dimension arc and then an entire overhaul, that being the Krakoa era. Plus, you know, this was when the entire world was right in the middle of Avengers fever, so the X-Men had been firmly replaced as Marvel's most popular team. If nothing else, though, this gave Marvel an opportunity to fix Betsy Braddock with the least amount of people noticing, and that is exactly what they did in the pages of a very small event called Hunt for Wolverine. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I have not read Hunt for Wolverine outside of the few issues I needed to research for this video. In fact, I had never even heard of it before researching for this video, which makes me think that it probably wasn't.
Anyway, this was a version of Psylocke that was in all of the popular TV shows and video games. You mean like the Asian one, or the original body Betsy? I mean, based on what I've seen, you're probably talking about the Asian Psylocke. Yeah, at the time when X-Men was the biggest franchise in Marvel. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Okay, that's probably what you're talking about.
Very good. I could be wrong about that. I do not know everything about Marvel, and maybe people in the comments will clown on me for not knowing this event, but also, like, I'd never heard of it, so what does that say?
I mean, it sounds like it's not really possible to know everything about Marvel. Like we have apparently 25 years worth of material on just this one character, and I'm sure there's like dozens of other just X-Men with equally convoluted stories in different ways. So like, I mean, anyone who's legitimately clowning on him for this is like goofy AF.
Regardless, the Psylocke thing does not happen in the pages of the main book. It happened in a tie-in miniseries called Hunt for Wolverine: Mystery in Madripoor. One of the main antagonists of this comic was a psychic vampire type lady named Sapphire Styx, and Sapphire Styx basically just kills Psylocke and absorbs her consciousness, but largely thanks to Betsy's telepathy, she is able to survive as a sort of remnant within Sapphire's mind. Eventually, Betsy is able to fight her way out of Sapphire's mind and uses the villain's power to construct a new body for herself. Since this body is based on her consciousness, though, it's her normal form, not Quanon's.
I mean, I feel like that's not how that would work, right? Like, if you spent, like, I don't know how old she was when she became Asian Psylocke, but I mean, it's, I guess we don't know how much time in universe passed for her to be in that body. I was imagining, if it's been like 20 years in our world, in our time. I mean, by that point, your mind would probably feel like the body you've been swapped into is your real body at this point. I can't imagine that she's been going around feeling basically body dysmorphia for 20 years and not saying anything about it.
Which is actually a pretty good way to resolve this in a way that makes sense with the lore. Not surprising,
yeah, that is true, though. Yeah,
Jim Zub, who's a great writer and a cool guy. I met him in a hotel elevator at Emerald City Comic Con last year, and he was super nice. That's not really relevant to the video, but shout out to Jim Zub. So after 2.5 decades, Betsy finally looks like Betsy again, and we can move forward into the Krakoan era. Well, technically we move into Age of X-Men next, but that was like a reality warp thing that doesn't really affect canon that much, so we're just gonna skip it. Krakoan era now. In this new period, Betsy actually gave up the identity of Psylocke entirely, preferring to redefine herself now that she was no longer tied to somebody else's body, which makes sense and was a smart move from the writers. They didn't get rid of her, to be clear. Betsy has not been sidelined at all. She's still a very important character, but they rebranded her by tying her back to her original roots.
And we still got Captain Britain down here. I wonder, what the hell was his story? What was he been doing in all that time?
Captain Britain. Now, I know it's been a while since I've mentioned Captain Britain in this video, but remember that this history is mostly focusing on the body swap, and there's a 25-year time skip in there. There's a lot of Psylocke stories in that 25 years, and Captain Britain does keep coming up. It is a part of her character.
Yeah, she's fighting Merlin on this page, which I realized in editing was not clear at all. Yeah, I don't... In all the depictions and descriptions of Merlin, I don't remember him ever being described as having like a gold segmented bodysuit.
This didn't come out of nowhere. Shortly after the founding of Krakoa, Brian Braddock falls under the control of sorceress Morgan Le Fay, and Betsy takes up his amulet, gaining his power and becoming the new Captain Britain, a title that she still holds to this day even after the fall of Krakoa. Though I am going to have to save explanation of those stories for an eventual Captain Britain lore deep dive because, I've already done a lot in this video. If I have to explain the Captain Britain Corps and Merlin and Otherworld and Saturnine among many other things, I will explode, actually. The point is that Betsy is still around.
To be fair, I mean, in this day and age, I think people would be fine with like a fucking 3-hour sprawling, like, just expose? No, not. A video just describing all the ins and outs of this thing. I can't think of a better word for it than just this thing.
She's back to her normal self, and she is using that self to have a lot of cool new superhero adventures. And if you're wondering what happened to Quanon, don't worry, she's actually still around too.
Wasn't her consciousness destroyed?
While, but thanks to some comic book nonsense, when Betsy restored her original body, this
comic book nonsense. Everything is forgiven.
Led to the spirit of Quanon returning to the corpse that Betsy was no longer occupying.
What?
From there, she joined the nation of Krakoa and kept the Psylocke identity since Betsy didn't want it. She hasn't been in nearly as many comics as Betsy, but
I like how they're treating identities as if they're like just costumes. Like, I mean, I know for these superheroes who have their secret identities and all this, maybe for them, an identity is basically just a costume that you put on and take off as easily as a shirt or whatever. But like, damn, they're talking about these like incredibly life-altering decisions. Like it's nothing. Like, I mean, didn't Quanon have like family and friends who would be like a little weirded out by her consciousness no longer being in her body?
Has done quite a bit, and she does have a solo comic coming out right now. And when I say right now, I mean like as of the day I'm recording.
Don't worry. The Captain Britain video was made. It was 40 minutes long. I don't doubt it. I do not doubt it.
Coming out right now. And when I say right now, I mean like as of the day I'm recording this, issue 2 of the series released yesterday. Also, I should at least throw this in at the end. If you're curious whether the Marvel Rivals version of Psylocke is Betsy or Quanon, the answer is actually neither. That version of the character is from a series called...
Why did I expect anything else?
Demon Days, which is a feudal Japan AU. This one is not only Psylocke, she is actually named Psy. S-A-I, meaning that she's not a direct variant of a main universe Psylocke. Think of it more like a Peter Parker and Miles Morales situation, where they are versions of the same superhero, but not the same person. Though...
Okay. Alright, I'll accept it.
Given that she is actually a Japanese assassin, she is much more like the Quanon version of Psylocke, so if you really need an answer, closer to Quanon. And with that, there we go. First full-length YouTube video done. I actually don't know how long this one is going to turn out because I'm recording this ending before a couple of the other segments are finished, but I know it's going to be longer than 10 minutes, so hopefully it was worth it. If you watched this video all the way through to the end, thank you, genuinely. No matter if you found this through my original TikTok audience or purely through YouTube, I really do appreciate it. Whether this TikTok ban does eventually go through or not, this pivot
this was made during
weird for me, so I really do hope
this was made during the whole furor around the TikTok ban 10 months ago. Wow, crazy to think about that. That was 10 months ago already.
Enjoyed this video? Big shout out to Ruben Perez for drawing all the poses of the character that you've been watching me talk through for the last however many minutes. If you're curious who this character is and what it's
well-made, I guess PNG tuber.
Like when I tell superheroes.
As one myself, I can tell when they're well made.
stories of my own, you should check out my TTRPG show, The D and Dorks, also on YouTube. The season of that show that this character appears on is called Power Play. It's largely about how superheroes and the news media interact. Actually, if you're a fan of Mojo, who I mentioned a few times in this video, this will be right up your alley. Also, not to toot my own horn, but I do think it's the coolest thing I've ever made. As for this channel though, I have several more things in the works already, so one more time, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for a whole lot more.
Alright.
So
Yeah, it was definitely very interesting. I mean, I mentioned somewhere during that, during the reaction that, like, definitely one of the most interesting things about the American comic scene that I really don't see anywhere else. Like I said, not even fanfic, which are famous for their convoluted ass storylines. Like, is storylines like this that just they kind of meander in these almost drunken sort of ways, but you know, oftentimes there's lots of good writers on there who are able to take these crazy twists and turns and make something interesting out of them. It's like you just don't see that in any other medium, at least that I'm aware of. So I mean, that's something unique and interesting about the American comic scene that I hadn't realized, and I haven't really heard described anywhere else. I mean, I remember actually watching just a few days ago this video on how like the Japanese comic scene has sort of overtaken the American comic book scene, and I mean, yeah, it made sense. Like the Japanese comics or manga have a lot going for them, especially now that the American comic book scene just cannot match them on. But I mean, yeah, this goofy fucking shit went on for like 2.5 decades. Like that's all American comics. Like there, no other. Yeah, there's there's no other medium or style of storytelling out that I'm aware of that does stuff like that, and that's, you know, that's interesting, and I suppose valuable all on its own. Thanks so much for watching. Consider liking, commenting, maybe even subscribing. And if you're feeling particularly generous and of age in your country of residence, you know, try visiting these links up in the corner. Anyway, here are some more videos to check out, and until next time, take care.